I'm Eric Hayden.
And I'm Izzy.
And this is Neon Static. Izzy, why don't you introduce yourself real quick before we get started with the game?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm a member of the Querying the Message testing group, and we have a podcast, which hopefully a new episode of it will be out of soon.
Very exciting. We'll chat about that a little bit more at the end of the podcast, or at the end of this show. Here we have round 3 of the GNK from September in Boston, kind of arbitrary GNK that we decided to record. That's me on the right-hand side of the screen, and I will go ahead and start this match by saying that I have some sloppy play on this game. I'm a little embarrassed, but we're going to put it out there anyway, because on the other side of the screen we have Jason, and Jason was a self-proclaimed relatively new player and played a couple games back in 2017. As far as I am aware, this was their first tournament that they came out to, I think, ever for Netrunner. And I think we'll all be pleasantly surprised by Jason's level of play on Arissana, a really difficult runner to play.
No, I'm sure we'll get into her play with the Arissana more and see that list a little bit. But before we get into the PD side, is there anything spicy in this list, or is it a pretty bog standard PD list?
It is bog standard. This is the Bridgman standard, like YDL, Rashida, Greasing the Palm, PD, Mangarm, Anoetic. There's not too much very exciting going on unless I'm just trying to go fast.
Just score agendas. I've been jamming a lot of this PD recently.
Yeah. It's supposed to keep things moving pretty quick. We'll see if that pans out for me.
So what's your game plan going into this, thinking that you're sitting down across from a Shaper?
I can't tell you what I was thinking on the day. Obviously, I think by this play pattern, I probably am trying to jam a Rashida before Arissana can get through whatever the first layer of ice is. I think setting up some decent ice in front of a remote, maybe 2 or 3 deep, and 1 or 2 in front of centrals, while I try and score out as fast as possible behind maybe a Braun or an
and it's the Shaper
Uncell.
U for a reason. That ice on R&D ends up being very important against Shaper, who can pivot to a conduit lock surprisingly quickly in this meta.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Nuka coming down very early in the game is great for Jason. She's going to get a lot of card draw off of that. So, and Jason decided to, well, I asked Jason to use the poker chips because all they had were the blue dice. So both sides will be able to see what's going on pretty well, hopefully. Getting a Q loop down so early in the game is so good. Usually a one of in this list.
It's so hard to find the influence, but when it comes up early, it really speeds up your setup in some of these Arissana engine decks.
And I want everybody who's watching to try and pay attention. Let's see how many triggers Jason misses with Q loop throughout the game on the runs. Spoilers, I don't think it's any. It's so good. Q loop, there we go. First Q loop trigger. Just this on the beginning of run. I can't tell you. I think I've missed it more times than I've actually remembered it.
And something Jason does here that I really like is she puts the cards that she looked at sideways. So they remember exactly how many they've seen as they've drawn them. It's just a really nice thing, and it's something you're totally allowed to do.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I'm raising a Hagen here, which is going to be a difficult problem, I'm hoping, for Jason to solve, because it's a piece of ice, it's a barrier that is very strong in the early game, and then once the rig gets set up, it's less strong here.
It's a gear check here, and if it's a Rashida push, which I think against PD, you're very happy with this res.
The
Rashida Corp is entirely willing to trade like 4 credits, get this ice res, to have something to push behind to get a Rashida off. Of course, Q looping down the SMC off the top will have something to say about that. Or sorry, that was the Ares trigger.
That was Ares for an SMC, and then getting the full value off of that overclock to get a cleaver to deal with this a little bit later. And then both subs are firing here. The first one's not relevant, trashing a program that's not a decoder, factor, or killer. There's none on the table, but the end the run is going to fire. These are single-sided Swiss rounds. They're 35 or 40 minutes. I believe we had the timer set to 40 minutes at the start of the game here. And Jason, throughout the game, you'll see Jason keeps a very neat board state. which I think is super important. All right. Well, okay. It wasn't a Rashida. It was a Tranquility, which I think I'm also pretty happy about.
Yeah, I would be. Tranquility Grid really powers the econ engine of this deck. If you can just hit a Tranquility every turn, you're not going to have a single econ problem piloting the PD. And with an overclock coming into the remote, you know you're losing it anyways if you don't res. So you may as well force the Shaper to use some tools, use some tricks to get it and get some value out of that.
Right. So we can see there in Jason's hand, a Deep Dive was one of the cards, that top card there. A Slap Vandal is going to solve some Gatekeeper problems for sure. That's a great piece of ice against, like, face checking a Gatekeeper is not a problem.
Yeah, it's interesting that some of the modern Arissana decks have been cutting the Slap Vandal in favor of saying just set up your late game board, but it's certainly nice if you have it in hand to just fix the problem that's right here, right now.
Yeah, I really like the one of Slap Vandal. And I think that we're just sorting out Arissana triggers running on R&D here. And Slap Vandal's coming down, I think, after passing the ice.
If there's a UAV in hand, that would make sense. Or I didn't catch how many cards were in hand if that gets down to hand size.
I don't see a UAV one. Yeah, I'm trying to parse out what cards are in hand. This was just click one. Yeah, what is that one just below Deep Dive? Can't quite catch it. Nuka here.
Another Nuka, I think, maybe.
We see a clot of Baya bands and I think a UV in top. Yes. Something that I didn't quite appreciate before going into this match is just how fast Arissana can set up a scary rig and how fast that Hagen can turn from a pretty decent face check into nothing.
Yeah, barely, absolutely. A couple breakers come down and you're breaking it for one with Cleaver.
Yeah.
But in the early game, it feels pretty good to make them pay 3-4 credits to go through.
Yeah.
Still, you're looking for a beefier ice, something like a Brawn, maybe a Mick to get onto the remote longer term.
Right. I think that this list that I'm on, the Big Ice or Brawn and Ansel, I don't think that there's a Mick in there. MIC would be... Yeah, I think that's definitely in the modern list. This was a couple months ago. And this was just a one-up copy, straight card-for-card copy of Bridgman's list.
It's a good list.
Yeah. I wasn't, I'm not going to improve on it. I'd like to think that I'm like not too slow of a player, but man, I'm sitting over here going, okay, Eric, let's make a decision. There we go.
PD is one of those decks you can do that with, though. Like, the game's going to take 10 turns. So that then if the round is 40 minutes, that each turn could take a few minutes and you're fine.
That's right. Yeah.
So when you're playing Glacier, that you need to go snap, snap, snap and make the turn go fast.
Yeah, as a core player, for sure, if you're on a slower deck, you gotta move things along. Otherwise, you're going to be probably behind on agendas when the game ends. Okay, so that was, yeah. This feels bold to me on retrospect.
With only 3 credits.
Right. I guess Jason's only on 1 credit here. Was on 3.
Yeah. But paying for the Bahia bands, of course.
So UAV, I'm sorry, Bahia band getting to draw 2 cards and then install a card from Grip. Paying 1 credit less.
Urban comes down.
Yeah. It's just really good click compression by bands. I like that card a lot in the Arissana list. Lets you just keep running. And getting like 2 installs in a run, especially maybe when you have something like an environmental testing, which rewards for you for installing, feels really good.
Yeah, UAV really powers forward the Arissana decks. There's been games where a single Urban has been almost enough econ where I can click for credits, use my breakers, and be completely fine for the whole game.
Right.
Just because the Urban does so much work getting set up.
And here I am just...
If this is an off-world, this is a great line.
Yeah, it is an off-world office, yeah.
I guess the unresed upgrades scared the runner off the remote with just a little bit too little resources to feel comfortable challenging it. Picking up a Rashida there feels real good.
Yeah. This Urban Art and Slap Vandal, getting something just to bounce, even just for one credit a turn, being able to move that Slap Vandal around, just gives Jason a lot of flexibility. And I don't know that like what you're trying to do besides just sort of set up a little bit here is Jason. DZMZ is a great added bonus to now that once a turn Slap Vandal turns into 2 credits free a turn.
As you're starting to have a little bit more money, some of these blind runs are a little more interesting. Like you've got, of course, got the 3 clicks left to deal with the buyer and the Slap Vandal in hand, which help quite a lot. But you still don't really want to hit a drafter in this situation unless you have a good way to deal with both those subroutines.
Right. I think this is second click run, so there's 2 clicks left. I think it was DZMZ, and that Jason hasn't quite flipped over the click
trackers have lied to me.
Yeah. Another Hagen. It's going to feel bad in a little bit if I can't find some bigger ice. I think I'm a lot happier with the turn 1 Hagen res than this one. Yeah, there we go. There's the click trackers. And yep, letting the Hagen fire. That little console on the bottom, I've tried to make that come up whenever subroutines fire. Just being really aggressive with runs. I think the Slap Vandal in hand is probably giving Jason some extra courage here.
Absolutely. It's really just drafter, I think, is the main ice I would be concerned about here, from the runner's perspective. And I guess now with nothing in archives, the Slap Vandal gets through a drafter just fine here.
Right.
Interestingly, the Slap Vandal also reduces the strength of the Hagens, which brings them down to 3 to break with your cleaver.
Yeah. Yep. There's the Brawn.
Just need the money to res it.
Yeah, 3 credits doesn't feel good having it, but soon, hopefully.
The PD deck can recover remarkably fast. You get a Rashida into the remote, you fire off a YDL.
Tranquility, yeah.
Yeah. Rashida into YDL into greasing onto the Tranquility has been 3 credits at the start, plus a click for 4 credits, plus however many the YDL was.
Right. Yeah.
That's a click left and 3 new cards. When the PD deck goes, it really goes.
There's that Tranquility, help me bounce back. Very, feels really important.
Absolutely. No, you see how important resing the Hagen to protect it in the early game was, just in that it's really powering your recovery here.
Yep. Just enough credits off of the Tranquility to hit a hedge fund. What was first click there? I missed it. I'd like to keep track of, go back and see how many credits that UAV generates throughout the game. It's
for sure
a good third of the economy of this deck.
And Jason is really managing this game remarkably well for being on almost no credits. The overclocks are coming at the right time to be very powerful. I'm curious what the intent is to spend the money here on. There's that drafter.
It is a drafter, right? These are an alt art drafter. And like you said before, I think not rezzing it because of nothing and being in archives and not wanting to go to 0. If I could peek into my past mind, that's probably what I was thinking.
But Echelon on top with Q-Loop makes that run feel real good.
Yeah, the Echelon coming out from the Q-Loop. And if I am correct, I think Jason knew that was there even before running because of how well she's been managing, Q-Loop depth.
Yep.
But
and there it is catching that they can spend the urban art credits in order to spend the Echelon instead of the overclock one, so that you can use the overclock for the actual break.
Right. That was a gatekeeper. You couldn't see it, but it got mentioned on the audio. Which we can't have here because there was background music playing and I'll get copyright strikes. I do like some good table talk, but for this tournament we couldn't do that. I think at this
No, I see a Takobi in Jason's hand, and that's a card that really is in a good position to come down now and start getting charged. There's some ice here that Takobi can really farm on, and that can just make the brands completely meaningless into the mid and late game.
Yep. Yeah, Jason definitely just bouncing along the bottom of 0 to 1 to 2 credits. But always managing to bounce back when it matters. That is something that's kind of unique to the Arissana. The advice of not going to 0 or not going too low on credits. The game changes a little bit. The math changes with Arissana.
Have we only seen 2 overclocks in the urban as economic cards on the runner side?
I want to say yes. 2 overclocks. Urban art. It's wild. Okay, so this is me, as it says on the bottom of the screen here, realizing that I forgot what I put in the server, and that was an anoetic, and I ask, and Jason nicely says, yes, of course, you can use the anoetic to have ended the run, bring the Rashida back, which got trashed, and then I think the trash gets fixed here. This is a GNK. It's not super competitive. I would not expect that to be allowed by my opponent in anything, more competitive than this. Remembering what I put in the remote server as a theme, I will struggle with that throughout this game. Okay, so getting to use the Rashida. Getting above 5-6 credits feels pretty good because then it turns on all the ice in this deck. And at this point, I have to imagine that I'm just looking for some more ice now. Something that presents more, or a manic arm or something to make it more difficult.
Bran and Gatekeeper in hand. I wouldn't be surprised if you're searching for the agenda to score. To go install, throw another ice down, throw a Managarm in there, throw an agenda in there.
Right. That's true. We did see Gatekeeper earlier and Bran. There we go. We've got one. That skill set of remembering what ice we've seen in hand is something I'm working on, and you just have in spades, Izzy. Nice work. And so greasing the palm here to just install a card. There's no tag to remove, so no advancement counter goes on it, but I will trigger the Tranquility here. Kind of hemming and hawing over, do I draw a card here or do I gain the credits?
I think credits is definitely right here.
Yeah.
Like you're just hovering on the edge of financial viability.
Right. Getting one advancement down, threatening. This is an agenda. You should probably come steal it.
So I'm curious if you found the seamless at this point, if this is an Ikawa or if this is a 4-2. With Anoetic with 5 cards in hand. Here's Takobi.
Yeah, that Takobi here running on Hagen. What is Hagen to break now? With
1
Cleaver?
If the Slap Vandal comes down.
That's right. Yeah.
3 if it doesn't. But
okay, we are running the remote, and it is the Gatekeeper. So that top agenda, drawing 3 cards, is that's the thing. Either the Slap Vandal can let that fire and break the end of the run, or that one, which could be a little bit more damaging in the long run. And there comes the Slap Vandal. So Jason's going to let the end of the run subroutine fire. What is the rest of the text on the Gatekeeper sub? Draw 3 cards, and then you can shuffle up to 3 agendas back?
Yeah, from HQ or archives.
Right.
And it, funnily enough, even if you don't draw and don't shuffle and don't put any agendas back, it will still always shuffle. A thing you can sometimes abuse is the runner to get more R&D fresh accesses.
That's right. Yeah. That's come up recently with us. We learned that from Jeff maybe 3 or 4 months ago for the first time. It came up at the local CO recently.
But the runner just not quite having enough liquid econ to be able to effectively challenge the remote here.
I'm just asking for actions here because the Q loop is on the board and it could bring out a Clot.
Clot is in the bin, and also it was on the board from last turn.
That's true. Yep.
Although I have definitely asked for action for agendas that were sitting on the board because
when there's complicated things going on,
you can't score the agenda.
Right. When there's complicated things going on as far as instant triggers, I just ask for actions, even when it's
never hurts
technically
to ask.
Not possible. Right. Anytime there's a, pay a credit, install a card. Clot is in the bin.
Clot is in the bin.
Obviously, like you said, the agenda was on the board for a turn, which
it's a little bit of orange poking out above the bio bands.
Okay.
Now, the Shaper does have to feel good here that you haven't found a seamless launch yet. If you have 2 seamless, every push now is game point. But of course, without seeing those yet, she has to be feeling a little bit more comfortable if you don't put something into the remote and advance it.
Right.
PD going to 6, like PD scoring out with 4 2-pointers, like it feels all right, but you don't want to do it. You really want to score the Ikawa, and you really want to double seamless it.
Yeah. So this again, as seen at the bottom of the screen, I had forgotten the PD trigger to add a card from bin to hand, from archives to hand. Let's be technically correct. This is what I'm talking about with like Jason's management of the triggers here is really very, very impressive. I find it very impressive.
If I had to guess, when this environmental testing pops is when the tempo of the game's going to totally swing in Jason's favor.
Right.
Is looking at the board state, if PD isn't able to quite find a more taxing remote, like she'll just be able to run the Anoetic 3 times and you'll run out of cards in hand.
And there's an Ika just to charge the environmental, really. And bring all the other, bring the echelon up in strength too, as well. On 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 MU, which is max with the DZMZ. Firing a your digital life here. And then putting a Spin Doctor down to draw 2 cards. This is the dialogue between me and Jeff, who pointed out that I could have made another credit if I did it in the opposite order.
Always important to plan those turns.
Yeah.
Trinket's interesting. I like the card here. You want to have cards to feed the Anoetic. And for once the YDL's gone off, sitting on a decent amount of money. So right. I like to draw here.
Trying to determine what the top right card in my hand is. You can sort of see the edge of it. You could. What am I holding?
Looks like a greasing the palm. I've been playing too much PD.
Yeah. So now critical mass is being reached on the shaper side of the table. With the Tacobi, the only breaker missing is a decoder. And the gatekeeper being the major thing, even at 0 strength, requiring that decoder. Although technically, I guess Jason could just let the draw 3 cards, the first sub on and gatekeeper fire, and use a slap vandal to break. Again,
only 2 charges away from getting the environmental testing off. I would almost consider not quite being able to see what else is in hand, firing off the simul chip to get one of them if I needed to.
Yeah.
Oh, Cubon off the top feels so good with environmental testing.
Yeah. I think this might be over MU here.
Yep, that's 6 MU, unfortunately. But
yeah. Oh, right. But Jason just realizing it at the same time.
Yeah, we haven't found the lily pad yet. We've done all of the setup off the back of a couple of Dr. Nukas.
Yeah.
And the cube.
Really doing a lot of work to draw the right cards. And the Ika going away. I think that's a more solid choice than the slap vandal. Than the Tacobi.
Yeah, your echelon already handles everything that is on the board. And if an Ansel comes down, the Tacobi is going to help you with that.
Breaking for 1 with Cleaver. The Hagen now. And that's an Ikawa. Jason just realizing, okay, I'm going to click 2 and stealing.
And from here, I think Arissana is just trying to pivot to that conduit endgame. She's got a little bit of money. She's on the board. These runs are making money.
Yep. Yep. They're making money and charging Tacobi. And I'm going to get punished. You can just already see this, as you said. 1 Hagen on R&D. This needs to get backed up as soon as possible. With a cube on, it's might as well not be there.
Overinstalling's was interesting. I wonder if you consider simul chipping it back here.
Having some ice in hand and some money to res it feels good here. And yet again, I forgot what I put in a server, and I'm being allowed to retroactively fire the Rashida. Remember your triggers, folks. It feels bad, especially when you're watching it back on your own channel.
I forgot to res Rashida at Can Nats, and I just had to play it cool for a whole turn. Just be like, yeah, this was Rashida the whole time. I meant not to res it.
Yeah. So overwriting and trashing the slot panel as well there.
That's good to get rid of both of those. And the simul chip is at least oversubscribed to bring both back. I think the Cubon probably more important here.
Right. Jason asking about timing for the sake of simul chip here. About, what windows exist, when can simul chip. To bring back a self-modifying code, actually.
That's a nice pick. I wonder if we're going to see Conduit come down right here. And if not Conduit, what we're thinking about getting. Of course, we don't have to commit just yet.
Right. Good on MU. Kindly trashing programs for Jason. Yep. And now this is, I think, slightly... I think the timing here cheats Jason out of credit, I believe, because this is at the end of my turn. I think the simul chip was at the end of my turn, and that the SMC pop was at the beginning of their turn, but they did not, or they didn't spread it across 2 turns, so they didn't get the DZMZ.
Yep. Although she might be thinking that she's going to install something else this turn and wants to save the discount for that, or like...
Yeah. That's
not thinking too. It matters that much because of that.
Right. I don't know if that was intentional or just like lost to the weirdness of moving things across 2 turns.
SMC for Buzzsaw makes sense. I thought I'd seen it in hand.
Overclock coming down just at the right time. This is wild. Takobi, allowing a 2 credit break of Braun using Cleaver, which is normally like, I think 6?
8.
8, yeah, okay. Magnets 1.
And charging the Takobi back up so you can run the server again has to feel good.
Yep. Yeah, it's a really efficient rig. Still 2 credits left on overclock. I'm popping a Spin Doctor here just to try and pad R&D. Because any 2-pointer here is the game. And luckily, just seeing another Spin Doctor. Grease in the palm.
Running HQ for a single seems a little expensive, but the deep dive, of course, really sets the reason for that.
So Jason knows that they can't steal an Ikoa here, and there's an Ikoa. They said as much. And on the last card of the 8-card dig, finds the last 2-pointer to win the game.
Credit perfect. Click perfect.
Right. It came right down to it. I think I did have something to jam like relatively quickly after that if I had survived because of how low in credits that took Jason. But I don't think it would take all that long, maybe a turn of just clicking for 4 or something. One economic card to bounce back. to at least being able to snipe an agenda that was being advanced. So really, really well played by Jason. I can't say as much for me. I wish that my triggers got handled better. I am practicing. I promise. I'll do better, everyone. Yeah, so thanks again for joining me, Izzy. I really appreciate having some other voices to join in and, hang out and chat and help us get better here on the channel.
Yeah, and thanks so much again for having me. It was a blast.
Do you want to give a quick shout out to your podcast that you have?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find us online at podcast.queeringthemessage.net. And the podcast there, and you can contact us there as well if you have any reason to.
Yeah, and you all have been posting a lot of really, really creative and exciting deck lists as a lead up to 2024. Is that right?
Absolutely. You can find them on Netrunner DB. If you just search Countdown to 2024, you should find the whole set of them. But we've been publishing the QTM slush fund deck list, the things we tried that were fun but didn't quite meet the mark or weren't quite as performant as we want them to be for competitive play, but are still fun decks that we're excited to share with all y'all.
Really cool. That's my bread and butter. I love that stuff. So, okay. Thanks for joining me once again. And thanks everyone else for watching the game. And we'll see you next time.
Bye, y'all.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks to Izzy for joining me for commentary on this game. Go check out our podcast. That's QTM, or Querying the Message. And thanks to our opponent for letting us fire a way too late Rashida. We don't feel great about that. Sorry, but we got to put it out there in the world. So it is what it is. I encourage everybody to play on camera. Even if you make mistakes, everybody does it. Please play on camera. It's great. It lets me make these kinds of videos. Speaking of which, thanks to our patrons. We've just hit our 10th patron. Their names are going by right now, and we really, really appreciate them helping us produce these videos. If you want to join the ranks, then go to patreon.com/neonstatic. Otherwise, subscribing to the channel, liking the video, sharing, commenting, all that stuff is really great for us here. It helps us stay motivated to make these videos. So thanks, and we'll see you next time. Bye.